Hello. Where'd Glenn go? Wasn't Glenn on 2 seconds ago?
Are you eating chicken or are you just...
Full disclosure, I am eating chicken.
100% is.
I just had a banana.
But I did not tell the chickens.
I was eating chicken.
What they don't know won't hurt them, right?
Mm-hmm.
There he is.
There is.
Hey, how you doing?
How's it going, Glenn?
Good.
All right.
Dude, take your time, swallow, have something to drink. Yeah, I don't want you to choke during the podcast. It's not good.
Welcome to Device Squad, everybody. All right, here we go. Welcome to Device Squad, the podcast for the mobile enterprise from Propelics. Device Squad, fighting crimes against enterprise mobility worldwide. Bad UI, frustrating user experiences, poorly conceived mobile strategies, we defeat them all. This podcast series will cover all aspects of enterprise mobility, including strategy, development, design, testing, and more. My name is Steve Brickman. I'm a mobile strategist and UX architect with Propelics. First, a brief history of the company. Founded in 2011, Propelics is a mobile strategy consultancy helping enterprises worldwide devise true mobile strategies and develop world-class mobile applications across all industry verticals. Propelics clients include large companies like Amway, Bright Horizons, Bank of Montreal, Dubai Airports, Family Dollar, DLL, Cintas, Merck, and many more. Propelics' menu of services includes 8 different mobile kickstarts, covering everything from mobile strategy and road mapping to MCOE to UI UX design to mobile testing strategy, along with soup to nuts app design development and support. Additionally, Propelics offers 3 homegrown enterprise mobile products.
Today is a very special podcast. We've got a full house today. It's a Strategists Forum. Strategist Spurti Gurram is here. Strategist James Hoshor. James, I'm assuming that you are a senior strategist.
Senior only because it's my birthday today and I'm a year older, right?
Oh, you tipped it. That was my second reveal. That is the second exciting thing about today's podcast. And I will insert some celebratory sound effects right here. And we have double senior strategist Glenn Gruber.
I'm here.
Okay. Is this my beer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait. We're supposed to have beer?
Yeah, it's Friday. It's
Okay.
Hoshor's birthday. And I'm on vacation next week. So those are all great reasons.
Damn it.
And of course, it is an extra special day because here in the studio with me, we have...
Are you a senior strategist?
No.
Not yet.
It's the rookie level.
How old are you? What are you, 20?
25.
25. Yeah, no, that's not senior. We have mobile strategist Alani Setalsingh. And he's right here with me on the mic number 2 in the studio.
So today we're going to be talking about what we mean when we say the retail ecosystem. We'll hear about a recent day in the life engagement, maybe more than one. I know James has a story about a day in the life engagement at one of the oldest and most prominent manufacturers and retailers. We're going to discuss some key challenges we see across the retail ecosystem, and we'll discuss how mobile technology can address those challenges, and we'll all share some recommendations on how we think our clients should get started leveraging mobile for their retail businesses.
Clients and potential clients. And everybody else. Anybody listening. Everybody who is listening to this podcast who has some sort of affiliation with the retail ecosystem.
So how many beers have you had so far?
All right. So This is officially your podcast episode, James. All the other strategists are sort of stragglers here.
So why don't you start out by telling us what we mean when we say the retail ecosystem?
Sure, Steve. When people think of retail and mobile in the same sentence, they automatically think consumer, right? And they think consumer apps for loyalty, for buying things. But when we talk about the retail ecosystem, we're really talking about everything kind of backstage and behind the scenes there. So literally from your product manufacturers to the storefront to your corporate employees and the connected customers. So I think when we're going to be talking today, we got to look at the whole picture of the retail value chain, if you will, or ecosystem.
You recently worked with a large manufacturer retailer on their mobile strategy. Why don't you share some of the experiences you had on that engagement and tell us what you think was unique?
Yeah, sure, Steve. So as you mentioned, this is a very old but prominent, successful manufacturer / retailer. We're talking 100 years in the business. You would think because of the brand, and I cannot say their name at this time because we're still engaged with them, but this is a very well-known brand. And you would think that mobile would be something that they've been very successful in and never been using out there and engaging with their consumers as well as behind the scenes, but it was quite the contrary. So we went out as a team to start off by doing a day in the life. And this particular manufacturer / retailer actually has their own corporate-owned stores. They have independent retailers that are licensing the ability to sell their products in their stores. And then they have independent retailers that they refer to as multi-focus stores, which means they're carrying upwards of 100 plus different product brands and different things from clothing to jewelry to gift cards, etc. out there. So for me, it was quite the unique experience. I'm not, being a guy, typical shopper that I like to go in and browse and take hours of time to shop. I'm pretty much one of those people that go in and out, buy what I'm getting, and I get out the door and hopefully pain-free and don't spend a lot of money on that front there. But, it was an eye-opener because obviously in a day in the life, we try and spend as much time as possible. We like to see how the whole engagement works, from the store owners' engagement with their employees or their sales associates to the sales associates engaging with the customers that they're serving that day in the store. And it really gave us a pretty good perspective of where mobile's being used today by this retailer and where it can be used that they certainly are not using it. And I think some of the things that we noticed right out of the gate was the back office part of the retail environment there in these stores. They were still using paper. Surprisingly, with all the different technologies out there and available today for using handheld scanners to check in inventory and such, this particular retailer was still doing it the old-fashioned way and going through the box and the different products that were shipped in one by one and pulling out the purchase order and literally cross-referencing what they had received to what they originally had ordered there. So it was definitely an eye-opener that a retailer that's this successful, this prominent as far as their brand out there, was still doing things very manual as far as some of their processes behind the scene. The other thing we noticed too, as far as the customer experience, is we saw definitely a lot of customers that were coming in the store, especially even guys, that were using mobile devices to price check, to pull up information on different products they're looking at. Maybe they're buying a gift for a spouse, and so they wanted to find out if this was the right thing to buy them, or if there was a better place to go buy it at that may be providing a better cost to it. And so we definitely saw different aspects of mobility being used in that store environment there. Another thing we did notice too was that they had a loyalty rewards program, and the loyalty rewards program was being heavily used by the consumers and stuff. But we noticed in the day in the life that the corporate owned stores were obviously integrated with corporate for the loyalty rewards program, and it worked pretty seamlessly. But the independent retailers did not have that full integration. So there was challenges that we recognized and we heard directly from those store associates about the inability to look up that customer profile and loyalty rewards points and redeem them at that time. They had to literally track things by paper and then go back either at the end of the day or even days later to enter that information in and make sure that customers are receiving their points. So,
Wait, they're using paper for the rewards program?
yeah, there wasn't an integration between that corporate database with all the loyalty customer information and that independent retailer systems loyalty application there. So we definitely saw where the need of full integration from the front and the store experience to the corporate backend systems was a challenge in this particular scenario. So it definitely opened up our eyes, and certainly going further into the strategy, we were able to uncover some really good opportunities where mobile could, again, help solve some of the challenges they're experiencing in that ecosystem.
So what was it that was preventing them from going mobile out to the independent resellers with that reward system? That just seems crazy.
Yeah, from what we heard in talking to this client is that they have hundreds of different independent retailers that all have their own point of sale systems. They have their own inventory management systems and databases and such. So for them, it was just, they felt it would be too complex, too challenging to go out and trying to do an integration with those and not really understanding what the total effort might be. They just automatically assumed, well, we just have too many things to try and figure out here. So we're just not going to worry about it. And we'll have to just kind of go the route that we're going, which was unfortunately causing a lot of pain for those independent retailers using that loyalty rewards program.
Wow. So I guess that takes us right into the larger topic of what were some additional challenges that you've come across?
Well, I think that one is probably one of the bigger ones we've seen in retail or any companies across different enterprise systems, right, is this disconnected systems landscape. So we're seeing that with this particular retailer anyway, their challenges were trying to maintain a pretty wide, diverse array of applications and enterprise systems, not only in their own corporate-owned stores, but even with the independent retailers that are licensing and reselling their products out there. And one of the things we found is we go in and we do a maturity assessment and we're trying to find out where some potential gaps are. This particular client, we noticed there were some definite shortcomings with their SOA architecture, their web services integration, APIs layer. Even though they've been around for 100 years, they have not invested as they should have in some of the areas of their IT infrastructure and environment to allow them to easily integrate with their independent retailers or even some of their corporate stores for that matter. So that was definitely one of the areas we saw and recommended to this client is to focus on trying to solve their web services integration layer challenges that they have and using solutions like an MBAS platform out there, API management, gateway tools and things of that nature to help reduce these challenges and give them the ability to integrate easier with these independent retailers and solve those pains.
This is Glenn. I want to pick up on some of those things that James just talked about. I mean, number one, earlier this week, I led a panel at the ET Exchange conference around digital transformation. The specific topic that I was leading that panel for was about application modernization. James talks about the fact that this is a 100-year-old company. And in some cases, I think that can make those challenges, instead of being more mature, it holds you back even further. Because one of the main challenges that companies can have as they go through modernization initiatives is just, why do they do things the way that they do? Because it's always been like that. Like there's so much ingrained, this is how we do things, that when you start to think about how to do things differently, that becomes a big challenge. And also when you've been around that long and you've got systems that were pretty low level at the beginning and based on the technology that was there, when you start adding new features and capabilities, the first thing that you do is to try and build on what you already have, as opposed to looking for new solutions. These platforms that companies can have, it's almost like an architectural dig. So you've got your baseline of this is what we had at the beginning, and now we've added this layer on top of that layer on top of that layer of code. So unwinding all of that and also getting the organization to take a more modern approach can be a big challenge. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's part of, James, what you saw in that engagement. So that's one point. And the other thing I think that James talked about that is really important here is a lot of times when we think of retail, and we think of that retail environment, we're looking at the store that we're in. But as James pointed out with this client, when you start to have distribution channels that are outside of your control, it creates all sorts of new challenges and issues to deal with. I mean, part of it is the logistics of how do I make sure that my product is on the shelves at all the places that it needs to be. And if you're doing that with paper, as we heard about in this case, that becomes really challenging to make sure that we don't have stockouts and everything gets where it needs to be on time. But it's also, you can't control those end systems. And it is really hard to plan a technology strategy when you don't have control of all of those components, and trying to get all those different partners on board. If you have relatively large companies as part of your distribution chain, that could be a lot easier. But if you've got a lot of mom and pop stores, like, they just may be using Square as a POS if they've even upgraded that far from a technology perspective. And your ability to push down technology into the rest of the distribution chain becomes a lot more limited and therefore a lot more challenging.
That's interesting. But how do you enforce the use of new technology? Can you incentivize it? Do we have any examples where we've had to do that?
Well, I mean, I could talk a little bit about the last couple of clients that I've been on, but it also kind of goes back to a project that I did a long time ago that involved Walmart as part of distribution chain. I worked on the kind of the behest of the manufacturer in that case, but there were a lot of technologies that Walmart wanted my customer to adopt. And a lot of that starts to come down to market power of the organization. Yeah, Walmart is very much, hey, if you want to do business with me, you're going to do it exactly like this. And it's not a choice. It's a binary decision. Now, they own all of the distribution, which is the front end. So that's actually a lot of more of the challenge that James described. And so it's really more pushing that up the supply chain. But in the other client that I've worked with, more recently at Propelics, we were managing an entire process of distributing products out to end customers, picking up some of that used product for recycling. But then we've also seen how kind of that next level of sometimes the people that we were distributing to was not the end customer, wasn't that the retail outlet, but it was to a distributor who was then had their own process to get that product out to the more local retailers. So it's definitely a challenge that we've seen. If you are the intermediary, it's a matter of maybe working more closely with the different channel partners, as it were, to try and help extend that technology further down the food chain or distribution chain, I guess I should say.
Hey, Glenn, this is Alani. And I think it's also important to note how much, customer expectations play into how these companies are utilizing these new technologies. You brought up a mom and pop store, and what people would typically expect to see, where it's the different point of sale systems and being able to use different functionalities, like Apple Pay or being able to pay with your watch and so on and so forth, versus, like your Walmarts or your Targets, where customers come in and they readily expect to be able to do things like that. So I think companies need to understand, where the need is relevant or the need is there versus having these different functionalities available simply as a nice to have for the consumers that they're working with.
I definitely agree with that. And the one thing with this particular client, it was really about education. As Glenn pointed out, when you've got a 100-year-old company, they're used to doing things the way they've done it for the last 100 years. They don't really know what they don't know, right? They don't know the benefits that mobile can provide. They don't understand those business cases or the use cases out there. So it's our job as strategists, by going in and learning about how they do things today, we can, through our expertise and experiences that we've had across a lot of different clients, can come in there and help educate that, it might take a small investment up front. And that's what we heard from the stores, is that even though our client was offering an inventory management mobile solution for them and a point of sale mobile handheld device. It was that upfront cost that was kind of the pushback for the store owners, especially the independent retailers. They were saying, I don't want to spend $1,700. I can't afford to spend that investment up front. But when I was able to go out there and meet with the store owners and talk to them about using this type of technology, you can get your inventory done in an hour versus 4 hours. That means that now you have 3 hours that the sales associate can spend working with your clients and driving those relationships and hopefully securing more sales for you versus taking them away from that interaction that's more important in the store, on the store floor there, or can reduce labor costs, which ultimately would pay for that as well. So I think it's a lot of education. It's a lot of making them aware that you might have a small investment up front, but it can pay huge dividends back pretty quickly if used right and integrated properly.
Yeah. And also, if you're a large company, you can also change the cash flow impact of things. Because when you say it's a lot of money up front, if you have the ability to say that, hey, I can provide you this technology and I will give it to you in a package that's very easy to deploy. And instead of paying upfront, I'll basically carry the paper. And you can have all of this technology, the software, the hardware, the entire solution for X dollars a month. And now you've taken that from what might be a capital expenditure that they have to be able to plan for and afford at that time to it's like $20 a month or whatever the number is. That makes it a lot more manageable and reduces those barriers to adoption because now you've taken that right off the table.
BYOD also comes into play too, right, Glenn, where most of these people, the store owners, store associates have mobile devices. We all have mobile devices and sometimes multiple mobile devices. And so giving them the ability to download an app and use their own device, as long as it's secured properly and such, gives them another avenue to leverage that technology without a huge investment that's typically required a lot of times with hardware itself.
Yeah, and adding to Glenn's point, this is Spurti. With Square POS, you don't pay upfront fee for the huge hardware costs, but instead you pay a cut every time someone uses your product, and that's 1% or maybe, I don't know. So that's one way to do business is there's no upfront cost in terms of like $10,000 or $20,000, but you just give a share of the money that you make with the sale, and that's one way to do it.
I just think it's interesting that the customers wind up having better access to data than the employees of the store do.
Yeah, that was definitely something that I noticed out there too. As I said earlier, I saw customers coming in with their mobile devices, and they're out there walking up and down the aisles and scanning barcodes to price compare and trying to get a little bit more information. And I did witness a couple of times where the customer actually asked the sales associate some questions about that. And just as you mentioned, the sales associate didn't have that knowledge readily available, and they didn't have a mobile device even in hand to even look that up. So retailers aren't embracing mobile just for that one reason there, to empower their sales associates to be more successful in serving their customers. And that's a big disadvantage, certainly.
Yeah. One thing that mobile has had a major impact from a retail perspective has been this whole thing of showrooming. So many people go to Amazon to see, can I get this for a better price, with free shipping and no taxes? And then you basically have to approach the salesperson, at the end of the day, you can say, hey, I can walk out of here and buy it this way, or you can match the price and get the sale. And that also has had a big impact on retailers' operations, and profitability. And more than that, it's not just that you may get shopped against, but a lot of times, especially if you are an independent retailer or you're selling many different products across different categories, in that store, you may not have the level of knowledge about that product that either you need to make the sale or that the customer has in the first place. So to be able to give your salesperson on the floor the tools to look up the details that may not be on the piece of paper tucked behind the price, so that they can talk intelligently to the customer to help make that sale and convert that customer right then and there. that's another issue that I think that retailers are dealing with and looking at how can they empower their associates.
Along those lines, Glenn, one of the other things I observed and also got directly some feedback from those sales associates that I was working side by side with is the fact of a customer coming in looking for a specific product that they may have seen on their website earlier when they were browsing before they came in, to find out that that product wasn't available, it's out of stock. And then the sales associate didn't have the ability to order that product right then and there for them and even ship it to their house or order it and say, hey, I can have this to you in the next day even. So definitely, you run the risk there of upsetting the customer or, losing the loyalty of them to come back because you weren't able to serve them at that point in time.
That factors into sort of the new expectations that customers have these days, right? They expect to be able to engage with a retailer across multiple channels.
I definitely think that's the case, right? I mean, me personally, I love shopping via my mobile device because literally if my wife and I are out and we're talking about my daughter's birthday coming up and she's throwing some ideas out, I can sit there on my mobile device and quickly start searching and find something and order right there. Or I can see it's available in a store that might be a mile or 2 miles away. And so, yeah, our expectation, I think, as consumers has really changed quite a bit over the last 2 decades with mobile, right? Because we just now automatically expect that we can buy anything, anytime, anywhere, through any channels and have the ability to track that order that we had or get an update on that. And I do get frustrated if I ordered something and true story, as we mentioned earlier, it was my birthday today. My wife ordered a gift for me online and she was frustrated because the tracking wasn't working. And so having that disconnected tracking information to where the shipment was at that point in time was very frustrating to her. So I think we definitely have been spoiled that way from mobile.
Adding to James' point, I don't know how many of you use Amazon Prime now. So living in Bay Area, I order most of my stuff on Amazon Prime now, and I get it in 2 hours for free. And it just comes up to my doorstep. And adding to your point, James, it gives me a live map and a live tracking of when the package was picked up and at any given point of time where it pinpoints to the exact location where he is at and when the stuff is delivered to me. So ordering any necessities, on Prime now is amazing. I'm spoiled by that kind of tracking and that level of customer experience.
I completely agree with that, Spurti, and I have used similar services where they do exactly that. And when they drop it off at your door, they'll take a picture of the package, on your porch or at your door to show that it has been delivered and, it's out of their hands at that point. But to tie back to what you were talking about, James, and how a lot of people have the ability to order things online so that, they don't have to spend the time to go to the stores or see what's available in different outlets. Sometimes people run into the issue, and I know I've done it a couple times, where you order a product online and let's say like a large shirt, for example, and then the product gets to your door and the size wasn't properly detailed or it doesn't fit exactly as you expected, which brings like another level of discomfort towards the customer because now not only have they wasted their time, but they may have to go into the store now just because the product details aren't really helpful when it's described online versus when you see it in the store. So I think companies need to be aware that even though having services like Amazon Prime and having the ability to order things online, visiting the store may be more beneficial as a convenience effort and just a ultimate customer experience.
Alani, one thing when you were describing the guy taking the picture to prove that they delivered it, like the first thing that came to my mind is that the modern day proof of delivery is like the old hostage proof of life picture. It's like instead of holding up today's newspaper, that person's still alive. You just show that I've delivered it.
Yeah.
And what you also described, like I barely buy clothes or shoes or anything online just because I need to feel comfortable that it's going to fit me. But going back to the last podcast that we did with Spurti, on AR. Like that's actually something that if you start to bring that into the applications, you can be sure that the fit is going to be better, whether it be by using the 3D kind of imaging that Apple has on the iPhone X or new technologies to follow. That can make that a lot easier. And then the last thing, it's interesting when you talk about the Amazon Prime, everything being delivered, but another good, sometimes annoying, but still from the retailer perspective, a good strategy is the free pickup at the store. And also to James's point, alerting you when that's ready for pickup, because I think that that's another good use of mobile, but also that's good because it gets you into the store and hopefully you buy more once you're there.
Speaking to your point about clothes and not fitting, there's a service in India. They are a direct competition to Amazon and other online retailers in India. So let's say you order like 3 different clothes. So they bring it to your house first, and then you can try it on, and then you can return anything that doesn't fit you. So let's say none of those 3 fit. So you just return it and you get your money back. Let's say you like one of it and you just return the other 2 and you get a refund for the other 2. So typically what people do is they order multiple different sizes, or if I'm sure maybe the fit of a particular design, place the order, he brings it in, I try it. If I like it, I pay. Otherwise, I don't. India is more of an economy where they don't have credit system in place properly. So they even do cash on delivery. What that means is essentially you're just placing an order. He brings it to your house and you try it. You'll like it. That's when you give him money to pay for it. Otherwise, you just say, I don't need it.
A little bit like Stitch Fix too. Stitch Fix is something that my wife uses. We have some other friends who do as well. Basically, you kind of give them some insight as to the style that you like. And then every month you get like a box of clothes.
Okay.
That kind of fit that style, and you keep what you want, you return what you don't like, and they actually then start to use that data to give you better, hopefully, suggestions the next month when you get your next box of clothes.
I've tried something similar, like Buy 4 Club, and that was bad. But
well, my wife said pretty good results with that. So anyone listening, give Stitch Fix a try, and Stitch Fix, maybe you want to be a sponsor of our next podcast.
Buy 4 Club, they sent me swimwear in December. I'm like, it doesn't help.
There's like an eyeglass company that was doing something similar. I don't know if they're still around, but they would send you like a box full of eyeglasses and then you would...
Yeah, Warby Parker.
Relative to like rewards programs in the retail industry and just, how the privacy works within it. There was the story that I heard of this woman, I think she was in her college age, and she had just found out that she was pregnant. So she went to the store, purchased all the things that she would need for, a coming child, your diapers, your formula, so on and so forth. And that company used those receipts to see that a child was on the way. So they thought, it would be beneficial to send her different coupons, different products for a baby. And they sent this to her parents' house, who actually had no idea that she was having a child. So they then, forced the news on this family who, A, didn't know their daughter was pregnant, and then B, thought there was just a confusion between the company and what they had ordered. So they thought that there was like some fraud involved as well. But it brings up to really discuss how much of this information should companies really be leaning on for, their loyalty programs or their reward programs, and how should they be utilizing this information in a sensible way so that it doesn't get them in trouble like it did in this situation?
Yeah, that was Target, if I'm not wrong.
I believe
a few years ago, and because it was a big New York Times article, and it got a lot of play because some guy just playing around with data analytics at Target, and boy, did he get it right. Like, he created this super awesome algorithm. It caused a lot of family issues back home, and they had to dial that back. Obviously, it was in the Times, so it was a huge kind of negative publicity thing, even though all of the data analytics people thought it was super cool.
So we're doing a lot of talking on consumer-facing technologies, but James, I know you wanted to try to focus this conversation around back office technologies.
Yeah, well, I think that what we've just been talking about is a lot on the front end is really the result of how well we're set up on the back end, Steve. So when we're looking at these high customer expectations, we definitely have to focus as a retailer or a manufacturer or product supplier. We really have to have this optimized level of operations across that ecosystem, right? Our mobile strategy has to be aligned with our omni-channel strategy, because today there is this need to be very aggressive in our fulfillment models to make sure that if we're promising, next day delivery or the ability to ship to store or ship from the store to a customer's relative or other location, that we have that capability to do that successfully and to be able to keep that consumer informed through that product journey, if you will, from the time they ordered it to the time they actually is delivered or received. So that's something that is continually overlooked, is we just take that for granted as a consumer, that every company, even a 100-year-old company, has all that figured out and is successful at doing that. And I think we've all seen over the last even 12 months with some of the challenges that there are out there in the retail industry. And certainly there's a lot of security threats that are going on and such out there. So we have to be able to protect that data, but also be able to make sure the data is available to leverage it successfully, to be able to ship our products and notify the buyer that it's on its way or it's going to be delivered in the next couple hours and so forth, right? So we can't lose sight of the bigger picture there.
Yeah. And I think also, as retailers try to improve the customer experience, there are new, kind of services and new, offerings that we may need to put in place that are completely different than what we have today, to be able to support that. So, one example, and this was actually in, I think, last week's Enterprise Mobile News of the Week, which you can find on the Propelics blog, was about this UK online grocer now using 1,000 robots to help fulfill orders and kind of do all the pick and pack, or some of the pick process, within the warehouse before it then gets packed by people, into boxes and then loaded onto trucks to be delivered. So I think that there's a lot of changes there. And, even Walmart is looking at having robots that kind of roam the aisles that are about as tall as the shelving, to also just be scanning for stockouts. So that as a retailer, you can look at either reordering if you don't have any in the back room, or alerting an associate that, hey, this product is out of stock on the shelf. Let's get someone to replenish. So I think that there's a lot of kind of interesting things that are, mobile or not mobile, but kind of emerging technologies that are coming into play, which, really require a complete rethinking of how we do the process. Even for supermarkets that are actually doing the pick and pack with the associates, without having, robots or anything like that, then you still need to have all the data around the floor plan layout, the planograms of each of the shelves, so that if you're going to have those associates pick and pack those orders from what's in stock, that they have the best, kind of route to get that done.
Eventually, robots will be taking all of those jobs, right? They'll be replenishing the shelves themselves and reordering items themselves.
And they may evolve. Like actually, we're rewatching the newer Battlestar Galactica. We created the Cylons, and then they evolved, and then they tried to take over us. Okay, if you haven't watched that show, just go watch the show. It's fabulous. It's a great remake. It's not at all like the 1980s version. Just watch it.
So, James, it sounds like we've talked a little bit about how mobile and other technologies can make life miserable for a lot of people. But what have you seen in terms of mobile helping to solve some of these challenges for retail organizations?
Sure. I think one of the areas that I saw definitely in my most recent engagement and past engagements is the supplier relationship. Obviously, as I mentioned, these independent retailers, they're out there bringing in hundreds of products, sometimes from hundreds of different manufacturers and product suppliers out there. And we've seen that, enabling these supplier reps or these merchandising reps, giving them the ability to have access to that store owner, or that store performance data. It gives them the ability to go have really meaningful, value impacted conversations with them that says, based on, for example, this upcoming season, we've got Thanksgiving, we've got the holidays, Christmas, and so forth, ability to look at last year's data to this year's seasonal trends and stuff, and giving them the ability to have, really insightful conversations that these things are the ones that are selling the best right now. These aren't producing as well as we had hoped, seeing those trends and be able to discuss those and pinpoint how they can make adjustments and maybe how they're promoting those products, or maybe where they're set up or displayed in the store. That is one example that we're seeing today by having that data really available on a mobile device to have those conversations right there with a store owner is very powerful out there. So be able to use that as a dashboard too, if you will, right there in the store and have those discussions, I think is definitely one area that we're seeing good solution for mobility and success being driven from it.
Just to add to it, James, while I was with Amazon, so Amazon does something similar too. Like if you're a seller on Amazon, you get a seller's dashboard that you can see how many people glance over your product and how many of people actually read still, the checkout button and didn't go through, or you'll have search impressions and you'll have all those metrics, and that gives you how many of your products are doing really good. So that kind of, as a seller, gives you a lot of control and understanding as to the analytics side of things. And most of the times, if people go till and add it to your cart but never go with it, it could be price driven. Or Amazon can give you a list of items that says, hey, these are the genre of products, or these are the products that actually sell really good during this time. And there's this new feature within Amazon, if you're a seller, is that you can automatically set the pricing. I mean, Amazon can do it for you. So provided they say, hey, we're going to give this amount of discount if that's okay with you. And you say you're fine with it. So it automatically sets the price to be more competitive and during holidays. So that's part of their Amazon Prime Day. As a seller, you need to sign on and Amazon takes on from there. So they make sure to give you a best price. So coming back to the point, giving sellers that kind of level of information really empowers them and makes them successful.
Another good example at a client that we've been working with for a number of years, which is a kind of a discount retailer / grocer, is one just to make sure that the operations are running smoothly, not necessarily only during the high season, but during the entire year, where we've created an app where the district managers kind of visit the stores within their region, on a weekly basis. And they were constantly going over checklists of, are the end caps set up right? How does this display look? Are the coolers leaking? What does the front of the store look like? Is it all clean? But automating all of that and being able to easily show history to be able to better track improvement and increase the real-time nature of that data. That was a great solution that's had a really significant impact on what the store experience is like for all the customers just as they walk in, and impacts whether or not people want to return. But it's kind of like this almost like foundational plumbing that no one even thinks about from a store operations perspective that can really have a large impact as you go forward.
Those clients would be very well served by our Audit Here app.
Actually that was kind of related. That was foundational to the creation of Audit Here.
Yeah, that is one of the 3 mobile products mentioned in the introduction.
Yeah, I think along those lines too, what we've seen is the onboarding retailers with the supplier. That was something that I heard firsthand with my most recent day in the life visits at this particular independent retailer that I went out to visit. They moved from a competitor's product line to this client's product line. And they said that was one of the advantages that they had, was the ability to look at a mobile app that provided short videos on how to set up their product displays, how to promote their products, different training that they could provide right there on the store floor for their sales associates. They had seen a lot of value in that and in success in quickly onboarding themselves, as well as they're training their folks out on the floor to sell those particular products.
So what did you wind up building on that job? Were you able to convince them of that mobile is better than paper? And
the interesting thing, again, because we were able to open their eyes and educate them on where mobile can drive success and optimization across their whole ecosystem by using Propelics frameworks and techniques for ideation and concept generation, we actually generated over 100 and some different mobile use cases that weren't even consumer focused. They were all behind the scenes. An application, for example, that helped the field sales and leadership team having availability and access to that information, again, on their different stores that they're managing, the performance of those stores, how they're doing on a seasonal basis, how they're doing with their loyalty rewards programs and such. So that was one of the opportunities that we're now looking at delivering with them. The other thing was, again, enhancing the capability to do better inventory management through mobile devices, be able to integrate that in through a BYOD type offering. So it doesn't preclude them from having that because of the high cost of mobile devices and such. And the other thing was, around the onboarding process, the training, educating them how they can, again, use mobile to deliver valuable information, from how to set up product displays and do promotions and sending out alerts and notifications about new discounts or special offerings for specific products and stuff that they can start offering to their customers out there. So it really opened up quite a different avenues for them to leverage mobility to drive success and hit their business drivers.
when you talk about training, with the new iPhone, so much can be done with AR now. Are any of you guys having AR conversations with clients yet?
We did bring that up as a possibility with this particular client. Walmart's been successful in using that type of technology to train their store associates, put them in real world examples of Black Friday and such. So there's some pretty cool articles and short videos that show how large retailer like Walmart has used that. But I still think some of these retailers, especially the ones that have been around like this one for 100 years, are a little bit slow adopters. They'd rather see others kind of prove the success of that technology before they jump on, especially when they're still trying to learn how to walk and just start leveraging it for inventory management and other simple forms of mobile technology in the retail ecosystem. I don't know, Glenn, what you guys have seen from your clients?
On the retail side, we haven't really had anyone looking at AR just yet. I mean, I think that there's been more to the use of videos or even VR for more immersive training, but that's really been the extent so far. Although I could see potentially when you're thinking about AR for if you're trying to relay out your retail space, yeah, that could be kind of an interesting way to see what it would like if I moved this thing over there and vice versa, to see how things might impact traffic flow rather than just physically doing it first and then saying, oh, that doesn't look so good.
What about just talking about interactions between employees in a retail organization? James, did you find any opportunities to leverage mobile there?
Yeah, we definitely saw that where, again, by giving the sales associates mobile devices, they're helping a customer and they need to get something from the back room or need assistance looking up something, they could use a mobile device to quickly communicate to another store associate. We definitely saw that as a use case, and have seen that being used already today with other retailers out there. Also, just the interaction between a consumer, again, and the store associate, by being able to look up products, getting a little bit more information to be able to help that customer find the right product for what their needs are. We're definitely seeing mobile driving a lot of value in helping secure the sale versus losing the sale because they didn't have that tool, if you will, at their hands to be able to assist them at that time of need.
Yeah, I think that would actually be a great opportunity for mobile. I can't tell you the amount of times I've been in a store where I spend more time looking for an employee that is free to help me as opposed to being able to actually just find the product that I need. if you had something like a heat map that showed where all the concentration of the customers were, or something like that, or the availability of the employees that are working at the store you're in, just so you can get helped quickly, as opposed to, spending time walking around, not finding what you're looking for, and then ultimately getting so frustrated that you either leave or you just no longer want to purchase what you were going in there for. I think there's opportunity for companies just to understand from their business perspective and a consumer perspective how much that customer relationship means to potential customers and ways that they're willing to help on both ends.
Yeah, James, you mentioned that you came up with like over 100 possible features, use cases at that ideation, which I think is pretty typical. That's about our average, I would say, somewhere around 100. I'm always amazed when the day in the life specifically, and this has happened multiple times to me on engagements, where the day in the life actually results in a product that nobody saw coming. And I think that's a really fascinating benefit that maybe we don't sell enough because clients don't even realize that that's even a possibility. And we've told this story before, but when we were at Amway to build a different sort of app, the app that we wound up building, or the prototype, was simply an indoor mapping application that would tell employees how to get to their meetings and where the meeting rooms were on the campus, because the campus is so large. And the reason that this was identified even as a use case, it was completely not even on our radar, is because nobody was showing up to meetings on time. So we had this discussion like, why is everybody late for our meetings? And it turned out that nobody could figure out how to get to the conference rooms. So when you were with that retail client, what was it that ultimately sold them on the idea of switching over to mobile? Was it something to do with like store analytics, or was there a tipping point where they were suddenly totally on board, or how did that go down?
The one that drove them to definitely move forward with the roadmap and really started investing more into doing some additional prototypes with us was empowering their field sales organization to have access to their customers, the store performance data, and the ability to have those meaningful, powerful conversations with a store owner. Because a lot of times they only get 5, 10, 15 minutes with a store owner because the store owners are so busy. And they're, as Glenn was talking about with one of his clients, you have these district managers or regional managers that are managing multiple stores out there. It's hard to get in front of them. And when you do get in front of them, you have to have that impactful information that you can share quickly and be able to drive your point home. And I think with this particular recent customer of ours, we saw that this was a huge opportunity because, to be honest with you, what we found out is their field sales organization, they literally have over a dozen different data points and reports that they're constantly having to review daily, weekly, monthly to keep up on all the stores that they're maintaining a relationship with from a supplier or field merchandiser perspective. And most of this data was in Excel spreadsheets. And so it's very time consuming, very complex. And so giving them that data in a very easy to read and consumable format on a mobile device, showing some very great looking UI from different types of graphics and charts and stuff, really sold it for them. The regional sales manager said just eliminating the paper that they print and consume, monthly throughout their sales organization, throughout 500 and some sales reps out there, will more than pay for itself because it'll be millions of dollars of savings there. So I think that was the tipping point. So again, it wasn't a consumer facing app that drove mobility for them. It was recognizing finally that mobility could really help their field sales organization be more productive, build better relationships with their stores that they're managing and the store owners themselves, and being more valuable to them was really the tipping point there.
Well, there you go. I mean, we hear that a lot, like from clients. They'll say, well, paper's cheap, but really what you're telling me is that it's not that cheap.
No.
I mean, on top of the myriad of other benefits you get of increased accuracy and record keeping and the ability to run all sorts of analytics and do comparisons and identify trends and everything. There's so many reasons to stop using paper.
Well, and then the other fact too is that what we heard from this client is that the way these reports are produced, and again, a lot of those were being produced as Excel reports that are then presented to the field sales organization. They're a lot of times getting this data a week or 2 weeks later. And so they're not getting it real time when they could potentially be solving issues that come up at that point. They're getting it, well beyond when something, a negative impact happens, right? And so just even for that fact that be able to have that information in near real time would be able to solve some of the current issues that they face on a daily basis.
So how do you suggest that potential clients, manufacturers, suppliers, merchandisers, retailers, how do you guys recommend they get started updating some of their, existing processes in order to start leveraging mobile?
First and foremost, what we always recommend, right, at Propelics is having a well-defined mobile strategy is first and foremost important, and making sure that mobile strategy is aligned with, in the retail world, your omni-channel strategy, or if you have a digital strategy, making sure that mobile is certainly a part of that digital strategy and not just an afterthought is definitely one of the first stepping stones that we recommend for our clients.
I'll add in that the one thing is to make sure that you're also thinking broadly across the entire organization and not just the store experience or the sales experience, but also look at your distribution chain and logistics, because there's a lot of opportunity there as well. It's surprising how many people don't really know exactly what is in transit and when is it arriving at my store, and being able to even feed that information to an independent store owner who's expecting a delivery and has maybe a customer that they think is going to come in to do that pickup. So those kinds of opportunities can be really strong, especially more and more as we're seeing consolidation in different industries within different segments of retail, and the big box almost getting primacy. Having really good control and visibility into that entire supply chain and what's in the DCs is really critical.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that, especially with this client that again that I was engaged with recently, being a manufacturer and a retailer. We identified 17 different actors, if you will, mobile users out there. And I think initially going into defining, who mobile users would be across that ecosystem, the initial group that we met with were just thinking simply, they're saying, oh, we've got consumers, and then we've got store owners, and we've got, our field sales. But they, to your point, Glenn, they weren't thinking about the logistics side of it, merchandising, marketing, or the others. And once you start giving awareness to the bigger picture, where mobility can really drive an impact across that whole value chain or ecosystem, then, people start thinking more broadly, more strategic from that standpoint. And then certainly helping them define their business drivers and how mobility can be aligned to help solve those business drivers is definitely an area that we help our clients understand and define is part of that mobile strategy process there.
And actually, one other thing that when you're talking made me think of the changing face of retail, and also how retail changes from a seasonality perspective. I met a guy at the conference earlier this week from the Honey Baked Ham Company, and they do like 90% of their business in 2 weeks. Basically Thanksgiving and the lead up to Christmas. And a lot of how they finally deliver is via these pop-up stores and pop-up kiosks, which we're seeing more and more throughout retail. So to be able to really make those pop-up stores effective, you can't have that standard infrastructure of, with landlines and traditional POS systems. And that's where mobile technology can also really have an impact, as those operations and retail outlets transform.
Yeah. One area that could help companies when they do eventually get to, the release portion of the new mobile technologies is maybe looking into things like a staggered release. We talked about adoption being a big issue with these matured companies. And if you have that kind of release where you try it at a couple small stores first, see the benefit, see the value that you're able to gain, and then we can be able to advertise that, to be able to market that to other stores, other employees, where they can really see some big value from employing, a mobile strategy. And it would make it a lot easier for adoption from the whole organization once you do have those success stories on hand.
Yeah, that's a good point, Alani. And that's actually one of this most recent client of ours actually had, as I mentioned, a mobile solution out there for some inventory management capabilities. But one of the shortcomings that we saw in that is that they hadn't updated the features or functionality of that application for 2 years now. Mm-hmm. And so one of the challenges that in the pushback they were getting is that it hadn't been updated. It's older technology. They're using an old Windows C type device, and it's very antiquated. It wasn't any of the new mobile type technology out there. And so one of the challenges that we saw is that because they aren't continuing to do ideation and identify where the opportunities were to enhance their existing mobile technologies out there to improve that customer interaction, to improve the ability to use that. That was a big challenge. So that was definitely an area we recommended to this client as part of our strategy. And we recommend to all of our clients for that matter is that continuous ideation, concept generation, having somebody that really champions your mobile initiatives, whether you're setting up a COE or a lot of companies refer to it as a mobile competency center or enablement team, whatever they want to call it, having someone that really continues to drive the success of your mobile solutions, both the existing ones and as well as coming up with new ones, I think is a key factor for, a retail organization to be successful as well there.
It's easy to convince people that mobile is important for the retail industry, but it's also important to choose the correct mobile strategy. Like James was pointing at, they went with Windows CE, and that's 2-year-old technology. And yeah, so that's true when they're selecting a new mobile strategy. So which is why you need professionals.
To piggyback on what Glenn was saying earlier too, is you have to have all the different stakeholders involved in your mobility strategy and the continuous evolution of that, because that was one of the challenges we saw with this most recent client is mobile was being done in a siloed approach there. And so they have a digital group inside this large organization, and they're out doing their mobile solutions. And then you had the retail organization of this large company that was then trying to do theirs. And so that was certainly causing some challenges and some pain points for IT, but it was also, there wasn't an alignment with any of the business drivers overall as a company. They basically had their own little marching orders or kind of this rogue approach that they're going at. And we found out there was actually some redundancies that weren't being leveraged in a singular fashion for this company too. So that was an eye-opener for this client.
Alani, you've done a great job of taking us full circle, talking about using success stories as a way to convince others to adopt mobile technology that's already working and working well at one part of the organization. And that's also a way that a retail organization that has some mom and pop resellers that they could use to convince these folks who are still using paper and so forth, by showing them the success that other resellers, other branches have had using all the mobile technology, and just enjoying all those successes is certainly one easy way to make the case to people who are maybe a little more reticent to adopt it. All right. Well, James, happy birthday. Alani and I will have some more beer right now and to celebrate.
I think I'm going to go pour myself a nice glass of bourbon on the rocks.
All right, guys. Well,
thanks everybody, and thank you for hopping on to a rather chaotic episode of Device Squad, the podcast for the mobile enterprise from Propelics.
All right, thanks guys. It was fun.
Cool.
All right, guys.
Cool.
Talk to you
guys.
later.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
try and do some sort of ending. I don't have anything pithy to say off the top of my head.
Who's feeling pithy today?
Oh, me.
Jesus, if we only had someone who used to be a writer at National Lampoon and could come up with something really smart to say at the
I'm trying to Google what pithy means.
You know what? I can add pithy in post. We'll be fine. All right. None of this is usable.
There you go.
No, not at all.
No. You know what? We should do a podcast where everyone is drunk. That'd be fun.
Well, I think that we were halfway there on this.
Now's your chance, guys.
There you go.
Yeah.